First cup of ayahuasca style mushroom tea. Down packed. It's about as good as I can do. Guess I'll do like a video note. I don't really know how to talk to a phone, but we'll figure it out. Kind of just going over my ego death on my on my mushroom trip. Took a 3.5 dose in a tea with some other ingredients. Specifically, what did I put? Red apple, lemon extract, honey, and some black tea. And I just got my journal here from the day that I tripped. It was November 31st. So this is like this is sort of a reaching back and looking at it now that about 3 months have passed since the ego death. Coming fresh out of it, I remember originally I was like, I didn't think I wanted to trip again for at least like 2 years after that. And that's because I was still getting an understanding of the ego, and like when you burn some of it down to that thin layer, you know, you feel like you never want to, you're never going to do it again, or at least soon. And then time passes by and your ego builds back up and you realize you're still an asshole. So then it's like, you know, 2 months later, you're ready to trip, or at least I was, or a month later, depending on how deep that ego cleansing was, or however you want to think about it. But definitely the best thing that ever happened to me, even though I knew it at the time. Definitely the best thing that ever happened to me in terms of like health, mental health. I remember specifically it being a trip to hell, like a trip into the void for thousands of years. I have written here that it said that it could have been 2,000 years that I was there. Obviously that's rough, and that doesn't, there's nothing behind that. It's just the feeling. It literally felt like 2,000 years for some reason, since I said that right after I stuck with it. Doesn't mean much, but it just felt like a long time. Maybe that's what it takes for your ego to cleanse. Like, for whatever reason, we go into this sort of simulation type of effect where you're put into, well, I was put into the exact hell for my ego, and, you know, whatever it helped me build that I lost in childhood or whatever the case, it's definitely a trip to hell. Wasn't much beauty involved. I remember so I guess I'll explain it. As I took the tea, it took about 15 minutes to start to hit, you know, and then I start getting the deep breaths. I feel like it comes in a wave, and you go, and it's like with each breath you're like climbing on the train, going into like Narnia. I don't know. You're going into this realm, and it felt, I have no evidence to back this up, but it felt as if I went to some sort of a realm, some sort of a dimension, and then there was some sort of judgment, and as a result of that judgment, a void opened up underneath me, like white, gray, and black, like lines going into oblivion. And then it's as if Thanos just like snapped his fingers and opened up a portal underneath me. So it's pretty gnarly, and I almost have this vivid picture of me falling into the void. And And then I felt as if I was in that void forever, and then the purpose of me being in that void is to maybe build some sort of gratitude. It seemed like a hell. It seemed like a hell, like Dante's Inferno, like not one of the deeper, it seemed like one of the lighter rings, but it's like it still took me a hell of a long time in this vacuum. Like, it seemed like everything was stripped away from me in the void. Every person I ever knew, the possibility, or like everybody that I ever knew was just not a thing. I couldn't rely on anything that culture had to provide us. The thought of doing anything. You learn to dig a hole. You only know how to dig that hole because you've heard it from people who, or if you have an axe, you only know that you cut a tree because that's been already established, and that's part of the culture that's handed to us. And so those are all like things that can be taken away from you in this simulation of, I guess I'm gonna just keep calling it a simulation, because it's like, seems like it's specifically tailored to whatever you're lacking. You go through some sort of a situation if your intent allows you to like get onto that side of the world. This is all confusing, but I'm gonna keep rambling and then just see what comes of it. First of all, the big things about setting and intent for me were you have to be in the darkness. Very little light, so you can look inward. And I got that from studying, I guess you could call it studying, looking into ayahuasca ceremonies and how the ayahuasqueros do their thing over there. And I guess people do it differently. And as well as looking back on the ancient Greeks and their the ancient Greeks and their ceremony in Eleusis, the Eleusinian mysteries and whatnot. You take a look into that, you dive into that. So basically with all that, I kind of formed my own intent going in, which was